You were logged in as CNCF operator,
Yeah, I know. I had to.
and then you left and kicked everybody out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay, it was just me and Andrew, I think.
I was wondering why everybody left. I was like, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't know when that account leaves, it does it for everybody else.
Yeah, Zoom is like that.
Okay, got it. Good to know.
I think it asks you, hey, do you wanna
It did? I
meet?
don't
Yeah,
know.
you wanna close the meeting or something like that. Yeah.
No, it didn't. At least I didn't see it.
Hey, Max.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing okay? How are you?
I'm good. The audio gods have smiled on me. I'm not plugging in. I'm not switching wires around today.
Yeah. What is on your shirt?
Oh, this is Spider-Man. This is.
Is that the lizard guy?
Was it the first? What's up?
Is that the lizard guy?
Oh yeah, the lizard guy. This is the Andy Garfield reboot of Spider-Man. The Reezer Fonz played the lizard dude, I believe.
Yeah.
This is a crew shirt from that.
That's cool.
Yeah, do you remember the lizard person's name?
It's like the professor or something, right? Connors?
Maybe
And
Reese Fonz.
yeah, Dr. Curtis Connors.
Doctor Who Connors?
Curtis Connors.
Churches Connors?
Curtis.
Curtis.
Curtis. Yeah.
Uh,
And then the character is literally just called the lizard.
cool. I see. I see. We got more people here today. Hi, Cece.
Hi Max. Hi everyone.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good, great. I realized that I haven't been in this meeting for a while, so I'll try to participate more in the future.
Oh, welcome.
Hi.
It's
Hi.
good to see you. All right. Do we want to start the meeting or waiting for people? Let's see, I can. There's one fix I have that I wanted to. Oh my gosh. Okay. My tab game is lacking. Pull requests. Yeah, there's two pull requests I wanted to. Well, it looks like someone already approved. Thank you, Rita. The 2971, the remove deadlock on the readiness tracker. That one's just good people are aware of. And the other is Alex's PR. That large one, the let's see, what is it called? No, not license. Support multiple sync sources. 2852. So that one I think is ready for just general review. It's part of like the work that Anlan, Alex, and Julian are working on to add the sync set stuff. And specifically, this centralizes the syncing logic into one core component, so it'll be easy to coordinate between the config syncs described by config and sync sets.
Is it ready now? I was waiting for for it to quiet down a bit before I dive in.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did a pass last night. I only had comments on like read lock versus write locks and like one variable name. So that's nothing. Nothing is going to change the shape of it from my comments. None of my comments would change the shape of it now.
We'll give it a look soon.
If you're done with these ones, I added another one with the pubs up here. I think that requires some discussions.
Let pub sub config controller only
Yeah.
watch special.
Somebody from community opened for the pub sub config controller.
Yeah.
Config map.
I think the existence of this PR is a good indicator that we probably don't want to be using config maps here.
Yeah.
TLDR, do it.
Yeah. I think it's coming back.
Do which now?
It's gonna come back and bite us, so might as well do it soon rather than later.
Like do it meaning not use config maps.
PRD, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any Sertash?
Sorry, can you say that again?
I was saying it's good to do it early rather than later while it's still in alpha, right?
Yeah, I think we were just looking for some sort of signal. I guess this is the signal.
Go do it. Yes, please.
So the idea would be to create a CRD, like a generic CRD that, and then each provider will be a thing under it, or do we want a specific CRD
per provider?
Yeah.
I'm open. Like either works for me. I think it depends on. Does it even depend on the extension? Like, yeah. One thing I'm thinking of is like if people want to add different pub sub providers, right? If they want to like fork our code basically to support RabbitMQ or whatnot, what does that look like, right? And so one model might be to just like add in a separate controller, right? And a different model might be to use the shape of the resource, right? So if it's a generic resource, obviously there will be some like undetermined X Kubernetes preserve unknown fields thing for like the specific config, but then some known fields that say like, hey, use this provider, right? And then we just need to structure the code such that it's not a heavy fork to instruct that controller about new providers, right? Meaning we probably like, ideally a fork would not need to modify any existing files and could purely just add files, right? So that there's like no chance of merge conflicts. I think both are workable. I haven't thought through what that would what the implications would be in terms of code shape, so I don't want to like say I'm solidly one way or the other, but that would be my main focus. And then UX wise, having the own specific CRDs, you know, you would get more handholding with regard to schema, but you know, admission webhooks do a fairly good job there as well. I'm sure CC is like, no. Cell validation would be more exportable, but that would be the user-facing impact that I could see.
Yeah, I guess if it's a generic one, that would make the onboarding process for a new provider a little bit easier, because so they don't have to create their own CRDs, right? Say RabbitMQ CRD.
Right. They would still need to create their own schema, though,
Right.
right? Because there's some parameters, but it may be there may be less boilerplate for sure.
Jake, did you have any thoughts?
No, I guess I can start like after I have some time, I can start with a doc which lists all the things that we discussed right now, and then we can go from there.
Let's start a design doc, and then let's also communicate to Mattis to see if he has any thoughts about this.
Yep.
But yeah, for this PR, should we block the PR, or do we want to merge?
I would say block it. Like it. Well, all right. So does it have use? I guess users can't use PubSub without incurring like caching too many config maps without it, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to make it harder to unwind? Like how deep did it go? Like unwind.
So we would need to remove the config map controller and instead add the CRD controller, right? So this, like, I mean, this code wouldn't exist with the new change.
Yeah. The other issue here is he's using predicates. Sorry, I'm just looking at the code right now. And what is his goal? Currently, the PubSub logs errors about. Okay, he wants to suppress errors.
Yep.
And that predicate stuff, that code would all just go away, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose there's no harm in merging it. Let's see.
Yeah, and on top of it, we don't have anywhere else, like, we don't have PubSub anywhere else other than audit, so merging should be fine.
Yeah, the one. I mean, whatever. He moved the audit connection flag to a place where it's gonna go away. So that will need to be restored, but So yeah, it's nicer to merge a contribution if you can.
Okay, so we're good with reviewing and merging.
Yeah.
Any other items?
I'm curious, CC, did you have any questions or thoughts for the? I'm guessing validating admission policy is your main interest here, or is there anything else?
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. Like I'm mostly interested in like the self adoption, but also like want to observe like how kind of open gatekeeper adopting it, or like if any help I could offer. And yeah, I would love to kind of join the meeting regularly if that doesn't hurt.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd say. Have you seen our prototype for using validating admission policy inside of a constraint template?
Yes, and I think I also see like the writing samples there together. Is that the one?
The which examples? Sorry.
1 second.
The samples in the demo, CC?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's changed as of like a couple of weeks ago to something that I think is more in line with what we'll wind up with. Sorry, if I had known you were here, I could have thought of some about like direction discussion, because I think there is like some back and forth that we can have. Like there's definitely some rough edges using VAP outside of an API server context, specifically mocking out. There's some mocking out of I forget what they call it, the admission object or something like that. The thing that has like the context for like authorizer, maybe it was, where maybe we can look at refactoring the code to eliminate dependencies that VAP doesn't rely on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the dependencies, like you mean, is there a specific dependency which like worried you?
Yeah, here, let me see if I can find frameworks. Oops, open policy agent frameworks. Let me, if it's okay, I'm gonna present my tab here. So there we are, pause audio share. Can people see my screen?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Just let me know if it needs to get bigger here. Let's see, package, clients, drivers, K8s. Temporary delete me is because variables aren't on K8s 127. So there's some light forking of the code that is no longer necessary after the 128 changes. But somewhere down here, yeah, request wrapper. So there's a wrapper that we need to create to stub out some functions that are provided by the admission flow normally. And a lot of that's fine, like get object, get old object, like totally makes sense. But then stuff like get reinvocation context. Let's see, what else? Add annotation with level. I think there's a couple of others here. They're things that VAP doesn't use, but is just like easier to provide to use the same interface that webhooks are using.
Sure.
It's not as bad as I remember it. A lot of this must have gotten cleaned up in 127.
Yeah, if you talk about like information under like the admission request. Yeah, I think we generally like since we trying to offer like the equivalence to webhook, so I guess we have like all the access to the information under admission request, if that's your concern.
Yeah, there's sorry, I'm sort of not prepared here. I can look later and figure out what it was that we used to be mocking.
Sure.
There's oh, good.
Sure, I can go ahead and check out like the code details like later, maybe after this meeting, because I haven't read through like end to end of those codes. So
Yeah, and you can see we're sort of like not using a standard entry point here. What part of the code is this query? Yeah, so it's the version attributes maybe. Anyway, yeah, if you look at how we're okay.
Oh no, Mario, I just want to mention, like, for admission requests, we did like some special handling inside the VAP for sure. Yeah, because we want to like control the extra information we want the VAP to access. So yeah, we basically kind of write our own like conversion and a logic inside of AP. So yeah, but I guess
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that it used to be rooted in the conversion logic. Honestly, it's been too long, so it's not. This is always not fresh in my head.
Sure.
Yeah, but you could sort of see like this ought to look familiar to you. We're basically creating a validator here.
Yeah.
And then that's what we wind up calling out to when it comes time to evaluate. Oh, here's a question. Is there going to be any work on like status for VAP objects?
Oh, so we actually already added status into the policy resource, and currently the status is only being used for like type checking information. So any like type checking error stuff we're gonna show in status, and that part is actually moved out from the admission plugin, but in the KCM. So we have a separate controller for that. Yeah, that's one of the like a big change in 128, and like we are open for like input on like in the future what other informations could be added into status, but currently it only contains like type check information.
Got you. Yeah, because one thing, and again, I'm forgetting if this is improved or not, but if there's like an error compiling cell.
Although that is not considered as type checking, so it's not going to be in status.
Got you. Yeah, so it would be nice.
Yeah, sorry, I should rephrase it carefully. So it depends. Like for some of the compilation error, it might regarding with the type checking. See, like a user might like mistyped a field, or like they were trying to refer to a field, but it's not in the resources they try to validate on. So that will be considered as a like type checking error and will be showing in the status. But yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of say internal error or something like that.
Yeah, because it would be cool if there's like a cell syntax error or something. Like if I remember right, that that error is sort of like held internally and like comes up when you try to actually run the evaluation.
Yeah, so we also do like partially compilation, like when you creating the VAP, I think. So if there is any like obvious error, like you cannot like get like a cell environment set up or something like that, then it will immediately like fail you. But for like say the error which happens in later phase, like a evaluation field or whatsoever, it will happen in the actual evaluation like process.
Yeah. So runtime errors for sure, hard to deal with those. But any error that we know prior to runtime, like being able to surface those would be cool for us. I think good for VAP as well.
Yeah, we do have that. We do try to run like the compilation process like while you like creating or updating your VAP. That's for sure. And any like obvious kind of errors will be caught at that point. But because we don't have like the extra kind of object on that point, so like yeah, that's the compilation error is the only thing we could kind of catch like ahead of time.
Gotcha. And yeah, maybe it's changed with 128 too. This is all reading from 127. Let's see. So compilation results right now, we're getting a results object. And if I remember right, any errors are stored as a private variable inside of results. Again, let me double check to see if that's changed in 128.
Max, the status you're talking about, are you mostly interested in the compiler errors?
Mostly, like, and just at a code level, because what would be nice is if someone tries to create like a constraint template and there's coding errors, we could put that on the status of the constraint template. Or if someone's trying to like do development work, right? And so they, you know, we have this Gator CLI that we have, and us being able to say like, hey, this didn't compile at that stage could be helpful. Although with Gator, like, you can have a test evaluation like pretty readily, so I think it matters less there. I think it's more about like live on cluster. Like you could think about if, say, they're using a Kubernetes built-in cell function that we don't yet have, that would raise a compilation error, and it would be good for them to know, like, hey, we're behind the times or whatever. Don't expect this to work prior to, you know, admission failures.
But the status you're thinking of is in the constraint template status, right? Or constraint status?
Yeah, I would surface it in constraint template status.
Okay, got it.
And I'm trying to like map it onto like VAP worlds where it would probably be on a VAP status. And I think what's interesting for something like VAP is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, CC, but like during upgrades, the API server may not be, if you're running multiple API servers, they may not all be on the same version. And so you could wind up with some unrecognized cell that compiles on the newer code, but not on the older API servers. Is that accurate?
So you were saying like because we currently is like in we are actually put it in the extended API server. So let me see, if user were running to multiple API servers, so I wait a second, but the say when the policy was being recognized, it's still like valid, like the incoming resources are still like being validated based on like whatever filter or constraints we applied, right? So were you saying like the coming in resources could be like at a different version, or were you saying like the VAP itself could be in different version?
I'm talking about VAP itself, specifically, like if you've added new keywords to cell.
Yeah, during like the upgrade or downgrade, it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that is a challenge for status reporting for VAP.
we have like thanks, Rita. I was just going to mention that we have like the version control kind of requirement in place. So it always works with like N-1 version. So it shouldn't cause any like issue or concerns.
Yeah, should not and never does, you know. You know, and sometimes it might even be just like there's this weird cell. Let's say there's a bug in the cell compiler, right? And it gets patched in like some release of cell that a newer version of K8s is using. You could imagine different versions of Kubernetes coming up with a different results for like, hey, compile this cell code, and whether it succeeds, like regardless of intent. So that, to me, that's what's interesting about status. If we tried to do status reporting that's surfaced to the users on the resource in VAP, is that the status may be different per server.
So currently, later, like if we will add like those kind of information to status, maybe, but currently, like for the current type checking we were added into the status, I think it will not run into this issue because first it's only, so it actually doesn't care about like the it's kind of a best effort stuff, so it doesn't care about binary stuff. It only based on like the policy and the incoming resources schema we got from whatever discovery or OpenAPI. So so currently, I think it shouldn't run into this issue, but later, maybe if we want to add like as you suggested, if we want to add the compilation error whatsoever into the status, might be. And also, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your earlier question. So as I mentioned, we have like the compilation check in VAP currently in Kubernetes upstream, but it's happening while like API validation process. But here, like in Gatekeeper, it's different, right? So we might need to maybe think about other way of letting people to be aware of the compilation related error like earlier, rather than like when in the actual evaluation kind of phrase.
VAP kind of like, oh, sorry, I talked over you. What was that?
Oh, I just feel this is definitely valuable.
Gotcha. And VAP, you're saying it like sort of on-demand compiles when there's a relevant admission request, versus Gator is doing the compilation as part of the controller reconcile. Is that was your point?
No, so the current VAP is not only do the controller on the controller resolution or whatsoever phrase, but also when a VAP was created. So even in the like kind of API validation phrase, it will go ahead and do some basic compilation check.
I think I understand. Oh, right. It's on application. It's not when it's running the admission check for inbound resources. It's the admission check for the VAP resource itself. It's like a synchronous compilation.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think like in the interim, it's more just about surfacing these errors at making them visible at the code level. Right? Like I don't think there's any concern there, right? Like even if we go slightly different directions. And I forget, maybe these are no longer private. If they aren't, then we can start surfacing them. So I'll need to double check that. Anyway,
Sorry.
I
yeah,
tried,
did you?
I tried best to take notes, so for what it's worth. I think I got the gist of it, but please feel free to update. Yeah.
I'm never quite sure if people are like thinking or if I've just like started talking in a way where like no one has any idea of what I'm like trying to say, you know.
I think I
I did-
understand. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask my tangential question for so I'm trying to update to Kubernetes dependencies to 1.28 so we can remove the temporary delete me fork. But I'm getting a compilation error that's on the param side. Seems like we're passing the params with a context, but I didn't know why am I getting this error, and I'll drop the link. This one. It's in the chat, and then the error message is in there too.
Yeah, and for context, CC, and maybe for Sartesh, sorry, I've sort of dropped that thread. I should look at it again. We're kind of handling params different than VAP is handling params for our specific thing, because we want to control visibility essentially, right? And so I'm going to over-explain just so everyone's on the same page here, but how VAP works, there's a parameters resource that gets defined. And then when you're writing VAP code, that params keyword and cell has access to the entire shape of the resource, right? And in Gatekeeper, we have a constraint, right? And that constraint holds not just like parameters, but it also holds what in VAP would be the binding, right? So like match criteria and the enforcement action that should be taken, that kind of thing. And one thing we want to be careful of is we probably don't want authors of control code, so like the constraint template source code, we don't want them to have visibility into the shape of like match and all of that, because that limits our ability to change those schemas, right? Like we then wouldn't know, hey, if we make match more complex, let's say, that might be breaking code, constraint template code, and we would have no way of determining that. So the easiest thing is to just constraint template code can't access it, then we never have to worry. But you know, there's one way of doing that might be to create a controller that took a constraint temp or a constraint and then made a params resource, which would be a lot of like rewriting of resources on the API server. So instead, what we're hoping to do is to not have params inside of like the Gatekeeper evaluation environment, but instead do variables.params. And then that would variables.params would point to just the spec.parameters of a constraint, right? So not the whole resource. And this means two different. Oh, go ahead, CC.
Oh no, I was not talking. Sorry.
Oh, and this means two different things depending on which context, right? With the two contexts being Gatekeeper is doing the evaluation and is treating validating admission policy as a library, versus validating admission policy is doing validating admission policy enforcement. For the Gatekeeper side, we should set variables.params but not have params. And I don't know if that's what's causing the issue or not. But then for the validating admission policy side, what that means is we need to set a variable called params and just set that equal to spec.parameters.
So yeah, maybe I'm not very familiar with like the mechanisms in Gatekeeper, so I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions maybe. So first,
Yeah.
like the variables you referred here, is that the same as the variables we defined in the VAP?
Yes.
So because okay, cool. So that's like and the second is like we only plan to remove params, or like it's also applied to other variables like object, request, or authorizers or stuff.
Just params.
So
Like,
the
and okay.
oh sure.
So and the idea would be like we're not so much concerned about VAP as evaluated by the API server. More it would be about locking down what users can express in a constraint template that can then be translated into a VAP object. So the idea would be there's no, if you're writing a constraint template that wraps VAP, you don't access params directly. You access variables.params. But params would still be okay to have, like, obviously for VAP in Kubernetes.
So like in Gatekeeper, the params, it still refers to the same thing of like the parameterization resource, right?
Here, let me make this a little more concrete. If I go to probably, let's just go to Gatekeeper demo, validating admission policy, owner must be provided. All right, so this is a constraint.
Mm-hmm.
And how Gatekeeper works, this parameters section, that's basically how the parameters resource works for VAP. But for VAP, the parameters is the entire resource, right? So if we just used params, the keyword, then the cell source code could read all of the highlighted bits, right?
Sure.
Including this match.kinds, blah, blah, blah. However, we, meaning Gatekeeper, want to reserve the ability to modify this in K8s backwards compatible ways, to be clear, but still modify it to have different shapes, right? So the only way to safely do that is to scope down the visibility of the parameters resource to only this parameters field. Now, obviously, we can't do that by controlling how the shape of params in VAP. So instead, what we do is we define our own params under variables.params. And basically, and I'm going to type something in the chat here, but params equals spec.parameters. So basically, this would hydrate out to a VAP object. And that VAP object would have a variable declaration of variables.params equals spec.parameters. Variables, to make it very clear, params.spec.parameters. And that way, the constraint can continue, we can just use the raw constraint as the parameters resource still, but limit visibility. And basically say, constraint templates cannot access params directly. It must always be through variables.parameters.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like the other fields besides, except like parameters could be kind of operated separately.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And yeah, then the other fun bit is we'll need to do some polyfilling for VAP, like match.kinds is not a matcher that VAP recognizes. And there's a few other places where Gatekeeper has like more complex matching criteria than VAP. Like for instance, we could do prefix or suffix matching on name. So the hope is that we can use the match conditions, right? Those cell-based match assertions to basically mock that behavior.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any ideas why we're getting the params issue with the 128?
So like in 128, we added the variables in 128 actually. So you have to, I'm not like, I didn't see in this PR where you like defined the params under variables. If you didn't define the params under variables, then it just basically cannot recognize.
Yeah, and the code that I showed you works with 127, and I sort of did some hackery to introduce variables just enough so that the syntax works of the variables.params.
They're coming from the line 208 in the, let me do it direct. 1 second.
Are you looking to share your PR, Sartesh? Is that
Yeah,
where?
1 second. I can just share the file. So I think this is where we are passing. Yeah, 208. Yeah, I just pasted in the chat. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Max. So this is how the parameters get attached to variables in Gatekeeper.
Sorry, slow computer. There we are. Context with value, variables key. This is for K8s 128, or is this looking at my
No, this is
existing
128. Yeah.
What's that?
For 128. This is my PR.
This is your PR. Okay.
So I'm trying to understand what we're missing on the param side.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so
it might be that I forgot to add something, or like it could be like a very small mistake.
Yeah, CC, are you tracking or rephrase?
Yeah, I previously I was like confused because like we just added like variables in 128, and if you are trying to use the variables like the same variables from VAP, then the changes should like I was kind of expecting the change happening in the same PR, but since you said you added variables like earlier before, so I might have to take a look. I'm not sure if like the implementation or like the behavior is the same as the variables we added in 128. Basically.
Right. Yeah, mine is definitely not. But this PR that Sartesh is showing you is using the 128 code. So this is a different version of the same code.
Right. And in previously we were trying to get around the requirement because 128 was done out at the time.
So I see you directly like kind of associated the parameters to params variables, which is same as other variables like a namespace or like a request or object, right? But the way you were using it is use the params under variables. I'm actually curious if you remove variables, like if you directly use params in your kind of whatever test you were running, will that pass the compilation?
You mean instead of just say params? Let me
Yeah.
see.
Instead of using variables.params, if you directly using params, will that pass the test? Like at least pass the compilation?
I have not tried that one, but let me see what. So you're saying just use params.labels, for example, instead of variables.params.labels.
Yeah. Because like if you were trying to use variables.params, you have to like define the params under variables to be able to let a cell recognize there is a params under variables.
Yeah, I have not
Oh
tried
yeah,
that.
yeah. Sorry, you're talking about this composited or what's it, composite environment or whatever. There's a add variable definition method or some similar name, right? And that needs to be called in order to recognize that variable as a valid variable to be accessed.
If you see the variables composition part under the documentation we recently just added, so that's
Variables.
like how variables should be how we expect the variables to be working.
So I think what I hear you saying, sorry, this is going to be painful as I click through all of this stack here. Source K8s IO, what is it? API server, I want to say. Package admission.
I shared
Is
the
it
link in
happening?
the chat.
Was this?
I shared a link in the chat.
Let's see, docs reference, but is this an API? Okay, yeah, this is talking about like the public API. Here, I'll switch to the tab. Whereas I think we're talking about the code interface.
Yeah, but like I was just refer to like the variables we defined here. Like if you plan to let cell like recognize there is a params under variables, you have to have like a name like params defined under variables.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see. I guess that might be the reason why compilation kind of complaining.
Yeah, and sort of what I was trying to say is it under composition? Compile and store variables, compile and store variable. Yeah, so basically this function needs to be called. Oh, sorry, share this step instead. This function needs to be called in order for the variable to be recognized as a valid variable name, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, I see. So the composite compiler needs to call the compile and store variables.
Yeah. Here, let me chat a link to all of this here. Oh wow.
But
whatever.
like if you already pull in 128, like that shouldn't be an issue. Like if you didn't call this, then the error should complaining like the variables, they didn't recognize variables. But I saw like currently the error complaining I recognize the params.
Yeah, so before I didn't call the new composite compiler, and then before that it definitely complained about the variables, but then the composite compiler eliminated that. So now it's complaining about the params instead of variables.
Yeah, I think that's why like we have to define the params under the variables.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to be clear, the root keyword params, we probably don't want to have defined in our local environment because that's how we guarantee users are not accessing params directly. So we'll have this magic variables.params that we get to define in the way we are configuring the compiler. And because we're configuring the compiler, we could populate that variable directly. We don't need to like create an intermediate variable definition, like what I chatted earlier, where variables.params equals param spec parameters. That would be more something we would do in the thing we provide to K8s directly, because there we don't have room to make that magic.
Sure. So you basically want the flexibility of kind of select the variables which user could access or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that could be done like now because we kind of already hard coded all the variables available there, and we pretty much defined. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and to be clear, I don't think K8s needs to do that. I think because this is a gatekeeper thing, and therefore we can control the expression before we write it to K8s, like we could provide that like lockdown.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sounds like Gator needs to create the param field within variables as part of VAP. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly.
Cool. Are we in all violent agreement and understanding and just looking confused? Or is there uncertainty here?
I'm all good.
Cool. Your hand was blurred when you gave a thumbs up.
Please feel free to see me anytime if you need me.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you showed up, Cece.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're on time too.
Cool.
Yeah,
Successful meeting.
Thank you. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.